whether or not you ask yourself if you're doing enough is probably the mark of an entrepreneur. And you shouldn't be upset about the question being asked. You should be worried about how you're answering the question.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Create Your Life series, where we help you maximize your potential and results in the area of personal development, entrepreneurship, and travel. And I'm your host, Kevin Y. Brown.
Create your life.
Crée ta propre vie.
Create your life.
创造你的生活。
Create your life.
Crea la tua vita.
Create your life.
Ontdek jouw leven.
You better create your life.
Create your life.
Create la vie.
Create your life.
Create your life.
Beautiful people, this is the Create Your Life series. I'm your host, Kevin Y. Brown, and we are so happy to be here with you today. And as you know, the first Sunday of every month, we usually do this thing, and it is called CEO Talks. And CEO Talks is where you get to hear about life from the CEO seat, you know, some of the glitz, some of the glam, the glory and the guts, you know, that you get to find out about. And today I'm actually really excited. We have our resident contributor, Mr. Eric Fondren, here with us, but also we have someone else very special in the building, a first-timer on the show, Miss Lenore Kantor, who is the founder of Lunch Warrior. And Lenore, I don't want to steal all of your glory, so I'll let you introduce yourself, but Eric as well. Please say hello to the Create Your Life series family.
Hi, it's great to be here.
Thank you so much. And so I saw these two together on an amazing panel and said, you know what, you guys have great chemistry. Lenore, please come in and be on the series and, you know, talk to us about, you know, life from the CEO seat, from where, you know, you've been and in your journey. So, Lenore, please tell us a bit more about your company, Lunch Warrior, and, you know, some of your clients and what it is that you do.
Well, thank you again for inviting me. This is so much fun. It's my first time on a radio studio, so I'm like, really happy.
It's exciting, right? In the lab.
This is a hoot. And actually, I've worked in like PR and media for years, so this is sort of amusing. Anyway, my company, Launch Warrior, is geared towards helping companies and individuals with innovation, change, and growth. So people who are launching new initiatives, starting a new business, entering a new market. I do a lot of work with business founders and also with emerging leaders. So I work with folks around, you know, whatever the business challenges are that they're facing, trying to grow their business, helping them increase revenues. A lot of my work is around connecting the vision and values for the company or the person with their brand, their messaging, their strategy, and their culture so that they can really be in alignment.
Everything they're about speaks through all their actions.
Yeah, so that's my ideal, you know, scenario where I'm working with people that kind of see that big picture.
Okay. Awesome. Well, you know, Eric, you know, we're about to just jump right in. And I think my first question for you all is, of course, today I definitely want to make sure that we get to talking about how do we personally go about establishing and achieving goals, and also how we do that with our businesses. But I think my first question, especially being Lenore, that you're brand new to CEO Talks, what has been some of the biggest challenges for you in the CEO seat?
Well, you know, I think it's sort of ironic because I'm a marketer and I'm really good at helping people clarify their messaging and, you know, get really clear. And what are the first things that you focus on? You know, do you have product market fit? Do you know your clients and what you want to focus on? And are you targeting the right customers? And I think for me, that was actually a big challenge to figure out what I wanted to do. So when I started, my vision was that I wanted to be like an outsourced chief marketing officer for companies because that was what I had done previously. And my business has actually like gone through, I don't know, I think I'm on the third iteration since I really started. And while marketing is part of what I do now, it's not really my primary focus. What I do more of is the coaching, which I had sort of shied away away from when I first started, because I thought, oh God, I came out of financial services. Like people in financial services, they don't want coaches because that means that they need remedial help. So coaching had like a negative connotation. So anyway, long story short, I think one of the most challenging things for me was really like finding the right clients and figuring out how I wanted to work with them and to do it in a way that I actually enjoyed, that made me feel happy and that I was adding value and that people could understand what I did and how I add value for them.
What's a key indicator for a good client that you would want?
You know, I want to hang out with them and they're not going to be a jerk. Like that's actually what I, because,
real, right?
Well, I mean, the truth is like, I was really lucky. My first 4 months, I had 6 clients like right out of the gate. Mm-hmm. And a few of them were, you know, I don't know what I can and can't say. They were jerks. They didn't pay me. They took me for granted. And they were people I knew. And I thought, yeah, like I kind of made me like, I don't know if I want to work with these kind of clients because, you know, they're just not great to work with. And they like, so, you know, the background was I'd worked in financial services. A lot of my clients were either financial or technical. So I thought they really, you know, they needed marketing help. But the truth is that they don't care about marketing, right? They care about making money. Right. And for me, I think it's really a mix of like, I think that you can combine profits and care about people. And that to me needs to kind of fit together because having one without the other, like you have no soul. Like that's just not, that's not the place I want to work. That's not the people I want to work with. Mm-hmm. So that, I think that was sort of like the evolution for me.
How did you overcome that? And, you know, how did you resolve these people not wanting to pay you or taking you for granted? What did you do differently to
I get paid up front.
Key indicator, people. Get paid up front.
Yeah, so that was like a big shift. I was like, okay, you want me and my time and work. You're gonna pay some. You know, you don't pay everything up front, but you know, you pay something. So then I know you're in it. I'm not gonna be taken advantage of. So, so that's sort of one way I know clients who are serious. And then the other thing is I really do try and scope out like what we're going to do. And I would say the other thing that was like a big learning for me is I was not a salesperson. I don't know about you guys, but I mean, even if we're like natural dealing with like selling and selling yourself is really different. So what I found was I actually didn't really understand the sales process. So in the last year or so, I've gotten more sales training and that's just shifted everything for me because I have a different type of conversation with clients now. So like when I'm actually talking with them, I understand what their needs are and I really can be clear on here's how I can help you. And then I get them enrolled in that and then we're in it together. And it's like a whole different type of relationship. Whereas I think before people wanted me to like produce marketing material and that's kind of something I can do, but that's not what gets me like I really want to partner with people and help them transform their business and do it in a way that's really like powerful. And to me, that requires a different type of relationship. It's not like, actually, I love this term. A friend said to me, like, we got to get beyond the transactional to the relational, right? Because like transaction is like, you do this for me, I'm giving you money. Relational is like, we're in this and we're going to treat each other differently because this is an ongoing.
My best clients we have deep relationships. I just went out of town this last weekend for a gala that I was invited to. And the entire team there, you know, I've gone and now that I've finally broken bread with the team, it's like we're almost family because we know each other. We've met each other. We've discussed. We've been in the trenches with the business and outside of that. Yeah. And it just changes the way it deepens the confidence they have in you because they believe that you're invested in their goals and their next steps and their future. And so having a relationship with your clients, I think, is definitely a key aspect. I did want to ask a question about your sales education and how you're bringing your business to the next level by investing in yourself. What were some of those either programs or books or training materials that you invested in that you would recommend to the
Well, what I would say, and you guys will laugh because you heard this before when we all connected. Yes. But so you know, I'm a consultant and I'm a coach, and I really think it's important to have someone who is outside of your business, who's sort of independent and unbiased, who can be a sounding board for you. So I work with a coach. I was in a program for founders, and we used to talk every week, and there was like 4 of us in our little cohort, and that was helpful for me, but it wasn't, the person who was leading it kept saying, just keep, pick a client and like focus on them. And I was like, yeah, but that's not how I think.
Right.
And then I found a business coach, and this woman has a program. So I am working with her, and I just felt like her way of relating was really good for me.
Right.
So, I basically learned a way of listening to what the customer's needs are.
Right.
And then talking about how their business challenges, like what I see they need to get to the next step, and then how I can help them to do that. I mean, I think there are all different types of training programs that people can go in. I don't know that this one would be particularly right for everyone. It just happened to be the fit for me specifically. And ironically, you guys will appreciate this because I am leading a sales workshop myself in late January. So I did a leadership workshop with some founders. They're actually, two young guys who are just from this neighborhood, and one of their a woman on their team. And so I thought we were going to be talking about leadership stuff, and it turns out one of their challenges was selling, because they're obviously startup. They're trying to get new clients.
Right.
So we did some role playing around working with, the sales process. And one of the co-founders was really struggling. Like his style, he was a techie, like he wasn't used to selling.
Right.
And so we kept kind of going through it. And I said to him, is that working for you? And he's like, well, yeah, I'm being aggressive, like I'm being assertive. And so the woman who was playing the client, I was like, is that working for you? And she's like, no, like he's being like, I don't want to give him, like, I don't want to work. He's just being pushy. Like,
right.
And we just kept working on it. And then by the end, his 5th try, his whole energy had shifted, and he was sort of much more interested in her needs. Sorry, I keep banging this thing. Interested in her needs and listening, and then his confidence had shifted, and so like his energy had shifted.
Practice was all it took for him.
It was practice. It was awareness. It was the messaging, the way he was talking about the business. It was listening to the customer needs. So basically, coming out of that, I was like, everybody needs to do this. Like,
Absolutely.
we need to practice. So that's so.
I took my colleagues, a couple developers, same boat, not used to speaking with people, not used to really getting out there and selling things. And I took them to a trade show. And basically at a trade show, if you've ever exhibited a trade show, you have to stand on your feet for 12 hours
nice.
and
Yeah,
sell.
long days.
Sell. And so basically I just gave them a polo, and I gave them the spiel. Actually, they listened to me give the spiel quite a few times before they then would listen. And they just went out, and sooner or later, you could see the people who were more comfortable with it and could adapt quicker. But ultimately, just getting out there and speaking with people and being able to listen in a moment's notice helps quite drastically.
Well, it's actually really funny because you're using that example. So when I was in the corporate world, I ran a marketing team, and we actually did 60 global events a year, conferences and trade shows. Yeah, and like around the world.
That's like once a week.
It was like, thank God I had people working for me in London and Asia, so it was cool. But basically, my view is not everybody sells in the same way. So what I would do is, if you're going to sponsor, right, you're paying for a booth, you're paying for people to be there, you pay up a lot of money if you're going to be like having that booth and demoing your product, right? So a more cost-effective alternative would be buying a delegate's pass, or you just buy a ticket and attend. Well, you can only do that if the person who's selling is like able to work the room. Right. But if you have people that don't have that skill, you better have them standing in a booth with the product, because otherwise they don't know what they're talking about. Right. So you sort of like actually need to know who you are, what you're good at. Cause like I tell companies, you shouldn't be at that trade show. Like, you're not ready to go. Or if you want to go, that's cool. Who are you sending? What are their skills? And based on that, that's the type of, that's the way you should be at that event. Because otherwise, people just don't. They lay out all this money and they don't take advantage of it. And
From the space to the marketing materials.
oh my God, it's
buying the
outrageous.
TV.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
adds
people,
up
and
very
then people
quickly.
don't follow up on, you know, so if you're going to do that, you got to lead into it. You got to let everyone know you're going to be there. Then when you're there, you got to have like a special offer. Then after it, you got to follow up with it. Like, so there's I mean, you know, there's like
It's
a
a
lot
process.
that goes into that.
Yeah, it's a process. So, Eric, what about yourself? What has been one of your biggest challenges from the CEO seat?
From the CEO seats, establishing a proper culture. You know, I've spoken about this. I always speak about it. I think it's one of the most important things for building a long-term, consistent business is the culture you set, because as soon as people come into the business, they absorb that culture and then they spit it back out to anybody else that comes. So whenever you're not in the room, anybody you've taught your culture to is teaching it to the next person. And so that's why leadership is so important. So establishing a strong culture is probably one of the biggest challenges I've ever faced in a business, and especially when there's a counteracting force to trying to build the right culture. So the people you bring in have to be on the same page as you in terms of what your thought process is, what your principles are, what your values are, and how you treat people and conduct your business. And so trying to establish a good culture with a bad egg was probably the biggest challenge I've ever faced in my business. Secondary to that is ironing out my sales process, finding the right customers, and then generating revenue. So I think those really ultimately go hand in hand, because your salesman is really going to be the face of the business, and how they go out there and walk in the world. They're basically amplifying your culture across the marketplace.
Oh, that's such a great example about hiring the wrong people, because I think that growing businesses like that is probably one of the biggest things they struggle with is staffing. Like, how do you get the right people on the team?
Yep.
And then a lot of times, like actually, one of my biggest challenges is like, I want to grow my business now. I need more support. And I actually have been like really hesitant to bring anyone on, because like I'm used to working in a corporate environment where I had a big budget and a lot of money. And so it was like easy to hire people. And if it didn't work out, you'd be like, sorry, it's not working. But now if I'm hiring people, they're just working with me. Like
The
and
onboarding
it's, you know,
and offboarding process is probably a lot more in depth.
And I actually like I don't want someone full time, but let's say I want like person part-time to help me with administrative stuff. So I had, young woman, very smart, and she like asked for a lot of money even though she didn't have any experience, and she was recommended by a friend. I was like, all right, I'll pay you.
Uh-oh.
She had no experience. And then she was like clueless, and I was like, I'm not going to pay you to train you. I'm sorry, that's just not the way it works. And and then I tried working with interns who maybe you pay very little or they do it for the experience, and then you're spending all your time with them, and that's just not cool either. So I actually had this new intern who started with me, was recommended by a professor, and she's brilliant. And I was like, oh my God, it's possible. You can find the right people. And so it's like you have to be patient, and it doesn't, you kind of have to know what you're looking for. And I think you probably can't settle, or you just learn from experience.
We say it all the time. Fire fast, hire slowly.
Yeah, that's true.
And ultimately, you will waste time training people. Even I have an admin assistant, but the admin assistant doesn't know anything, so I have to train them. So you waste 6 months training somebody to get to break even in terms of just operational capability.
Right.
And so then you have to let them go. So one of the things I've heard is if you have a role and you're hiring for it, the person needs to be able to come in and do that job. It should not be that they should come in and learn. And I think that as entrepreneurs, because we're always learning, we're comfortable giving someone else that second chance. But we're not hiring people to come in and be entrepreneurs. We're actually hiring employees
to come in and be able to execute immediately.
Exactly.
I agree. And some of it, like, because I hire a lot virtually, right? Sometimes out of the country, sometimes domestically. I think my saving grace in regard to onboarding has been to iron out the process from A to Z. As you know, I'm always talking SOPs. That's like my thing, standard operating procedure. Yeah. So when you iron out that process from A to Z, it makes it easier, and they have something to go back to. But at the end of the day, managing personalities, I think is very interesting from the CEO seat.
Skill set in and of its own.
Yeah, to be able to motivate and to keep people, on top of the things that they need to. I hadn't realized how much planning goes into, when you start managing multiple people, how much planning and how much, high level bird's eye view you have to do of everything in order to make sure that everything's
constant check-in.
Right. And so I think that is interesting. But definitely those SOPs, they save me when I'm doing like my virtual hiring.
Good for you. I'm impressed.
Yeah, that's not something young companies do very often. A lot of times all the IP and the processes and all that is in one person's head. And it's not distributed or easily distributable. And then that's when you lose that key person.
Yeah.
You literally have to get insurance for it, key man policies.
Well, and that's the thing is that, I had lost an admin. And I realized that certain roles are so important that it basically has to be turnkey. If somebody else needs to come in and fill this role, if somebody quits at the drop of a dime, then you need to be able to bring somebody in and say, you need to know this, this, and this. And another thing that I do too, before bringing somebody on, I do a writing assessment.
Oh, smart.
To make sure that you can write in proper English, because we're talking about administrative roles. So, while we have a lot of templates for correspondence, because we use a CRM system, while we have a lot of templates, it's also important for you to be able to respond back to what's not already in a template and be able to do it in proper English so that the client feels respected and, thinks that we are carrying on with the same level of skill. While we do that,
you were starting out with the writing assessment. What else happens?
Writing assessment, you have to be able to navigate the CRM system.
Right.
And so you can sign up for a free trial through the CRM system, and I ask you to go through a series of tasks. And once you do those series of tasks, I ask that you email each step or each completion to me and allow me to be able to view it. Therefore, I know that you're competent. You send me over the screenshots, things like that. Because when you come in, I need you to hit the ground running.
That's amazing. Wow.
I think I would like to ask an interesting question.
Go ahead.
As an employer, what is what's something you're looking to improve upon in the new year as an employer? And it could be anything, how you deal with people, the processes you're structuring for them.
Well, I can go first. So I have, and I think we were going to be talking about this anyway, which is the whole planning process going into the new year.
Yeah.
So I have, I set up some processes for myself. So I don't use a CRM system anymore because I just wasn't using it. I have another thing, like a checklist system. I don't use it, but I have it and I like it. But anyway, I'm gonna try and set up like key metrics and then do like a monthly review.
Yeah.
I think even weekly was just not realistic for me. But like, figuring out like what are the 5 key drivers of my business, my pipeline and sales growth.
Right.
Maybe it's referrals. Maybe like one of the things like this was perfect because I want to be doing speaking opportunities once a month. So like I'm going to start measuring those things that I'm doing, that I want to be doing, that I need to be doing, that are going to move the needle on my business. And that's what I'm going to really focus on.
Beautiful people, this is the Create Your Life series. We are back. We have Lenore Kantor and Eric Fondren here on CEO Talks. Y'all with us?
Yes, sir.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
So we ended the break and we were talking about the leadership and the employer changes you'd like to make in the new year in order to make your business greater. So, Kevin, what are you thinking is something you can implement personally in your business as an employer, as a leader, that'll help push it forward?
I think being more specific about the deliverables that we expect. I think another thing that I'm looking at now is as we're working to expand is that understanding that it's a numbers game as far as getting more advertisers, as far as bringing in more business and actually bigger guests than we've already had. So I think that it's just going to be a whole bunch of shot shooting in terms of, we got to be, hounding at least 30 people a week, to really get them going and then engaging more. So I think for me, what that's going to require is a bit more of organization and also a bit more flexibility. it's interesting because I'm already working 7 days a week, but now I got to figure out, you know what I mean, how to
work 8.
how to work 8 and be more efficient within the time, and then kind of explore that balance a little bit more. But I think that one of the biggest things that I've been finding is that the more peace that you have personally, the better it is, and it affects the whole aura of your organization and what you're doing. So that's definitely something that I'm on a pretty good journey with. So happy about that.
All right, my turn to ask a question. How do you get to peace?
Ooh.
That's one of my personal goals because I don't know if you guys found this, but like for me, language is so important and I'm really trying to be aware of it. I used to say, oh, I'm really struggling with this and I'm feeling overwhelmed and blah, blah, blah. And so the more you say you're struggling and overwhelmed, the more you feel. And I had this shift literally like in the last 6 months where I was like, I want to be at ease and I'm not. And I try and eliminate those words from my vocabulary because I don't want to feel those things. So I'd love to hear, if there are things that you've done that have helped you, because I think that's such a powerful, it is about the mindset.
Mm-hmm. For me, it's unplugging. At night, I literally put my phone in airplane mode. So when I wake up in the morning, it's just me and my thoughts. Mm-hmm. I've actually taken a break from dating. So that is bringing about just a level of personal focus. And then I have like a morning routine that I really strive to stick to, and it's called SPARM. So I stretch, I pray, I listen to my daily affirmations, which are positive things and goals that I have recorded on the audio. I read at least 10 pages. And right now I'm reading a book that is actually a personal development book. And then in later on in the day, I might read one that is a business book. And then I listen to something motivational. That's the M. And so that really helps me to say, you know what, I'm going out there. You hear 7 minutes from Evan Carmichael or, a couple blurbs from Gary Vee, and you're ready to take over the world. Right. And so I think
I love him.
Waking up and staying in that and saying, you know what, even if, I woke up, it wasn't 5:30 wake up today, it was 6:15, as long as I have that routine, then I'm actually giving myself the opportunity
to juice for the day.
Right. And to live on my terms starting the day. And so as I'm in control instead of being reactionary.
Right.
And that's
so you actually have a qualitative goal in the morning as opposed to a quantitative goal, right? So waking up every single day is effectively a quantity number, right? Did I wake up or not? Is it a 1 or a 0? Is it false or true? But qualitative is, did I get up and complete my initial, rejuvenation process? And that way, it doesn't matter when you wake up. As long as you do that process, your day's starting out on the right foot. So getting rid of distracting goals and putting in place those valuing goals. What was your A again in your process?
Affirmations.
But
I'll also say this, too, is that I can tell the difference when I do that versus when I don't. And it's so quiet that, like, when I'm stretching, it's 15 minutes of me listening to affirmations while I'm stretching. But it's such a piece that after I even get done, I just sit there for a little while longer, and I'm just like, I feel really in control. And so, and also just, on certain nights, like I'll just stay at home and just be at peace, turn everything off, and I'm just there, just thinking.
I definitely am trying to do less. Like for me, it's about doing the more of the right things, like because I really used to feel like, came out of the corporate world and there was I could have worked forever, long hours, and I had this mindset like, oh, you just have to be working harder and you're not working hard enough. I actually had a boss say to me, well, I'm not going to promote you because, you do good work, but you're not working long enough. And I was like, well, I am not working more hours. I'm sorry. Like, I got a life. And that's what I love about having my own business is that I can set my hours. But at the same time, I still sometimes find that I have, like, in the back of my head, this thought like, oh God, should you be working harder? So that's why I feel like if I can lay out like, here are my priorities, and if I know that I'm working on one of those, then at least I can feel good that I'm, focused on the right things.
I would like for all the audience members out there to push that concept just a little bit. Whether or not you ask yourself if you're doing enough is probably the mark of an entrepreneur, and you shouldn't be upset about the question being asked. You should be worried about how you're answering the question. If you're constantly telling yourself no, find a way to tell yourself yes by having qualitative solutions that answer that question. So for you, you're saying you find a concrete goal that you can achieve and or have achieved that allows you to answer yes to the question, am I working hard enough? Most people have that busy, I'm getting stuff done, but I'm not getting to the things that need to get done. And so they can't even answer the question qualitatively and properly because they're just doing work and not doing what needs to get done.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's true that it's easy to get like caught up in the busyness, like just do something. And then when you stop and think like, oh, well, is this actually going to help me? Like, I mean, the other thing is you sort of need to recognize who you are and what you're good at. Like, I'm an idea person, and I carry my notebooks. I come up with lots of stuff all the time. So I'm sort of thinking about, like maybe I should even carve out space in my day to just kind of let myself do that. Or when I do think, to not feel bad about it because that's actually something I need for me is to have thinking time.
Right. Absolutely. Not only getting away, I told Kevin all the time, work-life balance is the most important thing that's generated any success in my life as an entrepreneur. When I was heads down and doing the 18-hour days and eating the pizza and just being stressed out, it's like, oh, I'm grinding. That's what entrepreneurs do. You never quit. And then I realized that I wasn't happy. I wasn't successful because I believe successful is a state of being and not an event. And I just didn't feel good about life. And then sooner or later, I decided to allow my offline life to be cherished and protected from a time perspective. And so if I was going home, once I get home, that's it. And I may answer some emails later on, but I unplug in order to allow that, especially now that I have a daughter and, I've been married for a few years now. It's just very important that they know that part of my life is just as important as my corporate part of my life. It's just as big as part of my identity. And funny enough, when I went to this gala this other weekend, you realize how investing in that other part of your life provides you capital in your relationships and business.
Yeah,
being able to say that not only am I solid and secure and stable in my business life, I'm solid and secure and stable in my family life, and it helps it make you a multidimensional person, and people like seeing themselves in you. They like seeing aspirational stuff. It's an important and interesting psychology concept that I go back on, but I absolutely believe that work-life balance is necessary.
I mean, it's interesting because I would say one thing that shifted for me is having my own business. Like, my work and my life are pretty intertwined. Yeah. So when I travel, I'm usually doing it for business, and then I have pleasure add-on. Like, every once in a while, I'll take my own vacation, but then I try and find a business reason that I'm going to do it. But I try and separate them because when I mix them too much, then it ruins the vacation part. But it is interesting to be thinking about carving it out or sort of having them complement each other and support each other rather than one at the expense of the other. Because I think
it's not a zero-sum game.
Yeah, but I think you're right that it can be very easy to be all work and no play, and that just would not work for me.
Yeah. What are some of the things or some of the ways that you two go about creating your goals for the new year, or creating your goals for your business and for yourself, and how do you execute and keep yourself accountable?
I mean, so I'm just focused on this right now. I was actually taking some notes when I was riding up here on the subway. So have you guys ever done a vision board?
Yes.
You know that, right? So so I wanted to do my vision board because it was just my birthday last month, and I could not get motivated. Thank you. I could not get motivated. I was I'm not up for the vision board. And then somehow last weekend, stuff just started spouting up, and I was oh God, write this down. I got to write this down. So I came up with what do I want to do? I want to hit certain revenue numbers. I want to, like I have, let's say 3 services that I offer. So I wanted to increase each of them. And I started setting some target numbers of clients that I want to have. So like I had those business goals. And then I had some similar to you, like organizational processes. Are there things I need to put in place to become more efficient? And then like some marketing stuff. So then I basically just wrote them all down. And now what I'm trying to do is sort of map them out. Like, okay, like what,
First
how
step,
am I going to
step,
move
what
them?
leads to the
And it's
next?
actually been a little bit painful. I will be honest with you, because I mean, like, I do this for other people and I make it really easy for them. Doing it for myself, really hard. So it's not, I haven't quite figured it out yet, because there's also this way where like I want to operationalize it and make it like I press the button and it tells me how I'm doing, and I'm not quite at that point yet. So so I need to sort of figure out how I am going to track this.
Key performance indicators that you can constantly come back to.
Yeah,
and
and just
above or below
know,
the threshold.
like for example, who's referring me business? Like, can I track and thank those people? And how long does it take for me to close certain clients? Right? Because certain things close really quickly. Some of the larger accounts take long. Just different things like that. And like how many? Like I think it was cool that you had that number. Like you need 30 calls, a week or whatever that is. Like I think you do need to have some numbers, but at the same time, the other thing I might argue is if you close a higher percentage of your deals, you actually need fewer. Right. So it's not always a
That's an
quantity
interesting
game.
distinction.
It can be a quality game.
But that also means you're finding the right clients to go after.
That's right. So
and
then,
saying no.
so figuring out like some of that stuff. So that's where this whole focus on sales, like, can I find the right clients and then close more of them?
Right. I do find, just real quick on sales, one of the reasons people have a hard time selling, especially if they're building a new business or providing a new service to the market, is because they believe the myth that everybody's a potential client. And so they have no way of filtering it down from the universe to their actual potential clients that would even decide that as a product they would purchase. I would think that in terms of the new year and developing goals, because I'm a computer scientist, I think in ones and zeros sometimes. My wife hates it. I like to be hyperbolic, and I'll just say it's either this extreme or this extreme. But ultimately, the best way to build your goal set is to go top down, I would think. Is categorize them first. Categorize the goals sets, right? So if you have your sales goals, just put sales on the paper. Just put sales on the paper. That's the first step. You have your operational goals. Put operation on the paper. And instead of going to sales, I want to close $50,000 next year, go an even higher level than that. Sales. I want to hire the right salesperson. I want to increase my sales. And then that is a goal that needs to be broken up into tasks that are tied to timelines. So they have milestones that need to be achieved. So if you want to close 50,000 people, you need to talk to 30 a week in order to reach this many in terms of percentage of sale close. And so going top down allows you to look at it and break it up and continue to make it more and smaller bite-sized chunks. That way you're not overwhelmed in terms of when you go bottom up, you're going to get overwhelmed because then you're just listing tasks. And now your task list gets crazy and you can't even check it off because it just keeps growing. You definitely have to silo them out. And I find that's one of the hardest things that people who communicate with me in terms of trying to get things done, that's what they're dealing with. They're being bombarded by the tasks as opposed to following the strategy from the vision point, which is where I think the vision board comes into play, right?
Yeah.
Vision boards are tricky. I like vision boards, but I think that when you put a vision board up, you're oftentimes looking at the end product.
Interesting.
And that is where the illusion takes place and where you kind of get duped. So I think that while you may put things on your vision board, I think it's important to understand, how much that may cost or what exactly it takes to get there, the backstory to it. And that's actually something that I really do, like in my goal setting workshop. That's something that we do is we backwards plan it, because you throw a Lamborghini up on your vision board, how much does the Lamborghini actually cost? A lot of people probably that won't know, or how much these vacations or trips to this place and that place. And a lot of times this stuff is more affordable than you may think that it is, or, it might take, if you have somebody who's on your vision board, right? You got to think about, you've probably seen them in the limelight for the last 3 to 5 years, but you still got to talk about the 10
years
that it took to get them there, and them sleeping in, on the floor in New York City, or, waiting tables, downtown before they actually hit it big. So I think that the vision boards are cool, but you always have to know the backstory of the stuff that you're putting on there, because it's very important to give you a realistic perspective.
Yeah, and I just, FYI, I would not recommend, I do vision boards personally. I don't recommend that for business, but it was like I was using that as like my starting point, just to kind of set some priorities.
But you have to have vision, though, as an entrepreneur, definitely.
Yeah, I think the thing that I sometimes think about is I tend to be very practical, like I want certain things, but then I realize maybe I'm actually not thinking big enough. So it's sort of like, for me, it's this thing like I don't want to think so big if that's not actually what I want, but I don't want to hold myself back from thinking about what I really could achieve, because then you're not shooting high enough. So you sort of like want to set stretch goals that you're going to reach for, but not ones that are like so far out of reach that it's actually going to like aggravate you that you don't meet them. So I don't know. Have you guys found that can be sort of a tricky road to walk, right?
Because, I've been doing it for so long, I realized that the stretch goals, the ones that are probably your long-term goals, are at least a year out. At least. All they are is a visual image in your brain. That's usually all they are, because they're so far out there. They haven't been implemented yet. There's nothing. There are steps in between that you haven't executed yet to even get to them. But they're there because they help you keep walking forward. They keep that momentum of where you're going to go next. And so I put all those, if I lose sight of what those look like, that's when I know my business is in check. It actually, having these intangible visions gives me security in terms of me believing I'm walking in the right direction, because it gives me a bit of a compass. I'm like, okay, that's North Pole. I can't see it because it's over the bend, but I know that direction is North Pole. Then there's my short-term goals, which are really just milestones, things that are buckets of tasks that once they're completed, they will equate to this. So if I've done this many sales and this many calls and this many whatever, it'll equate to this goal. Getting from immediate task to short-term goal, there are so many circumstances that kill those steps or get in the way that you have to get over. And I'm so comfortable with this now because it's happened so many times that I realize the vision can change, and I'm comfortable with the vision changing.
Flexibility.
So the long-term goal changes, but as long as there is a vision, everything else I'm comfortable getting through. And so that's where I think the realism comes into place, knowing that getting from immediate task to short-term milestone and mid-term milestone, that is going to be a winding path that you don't have a ton of control over. So be comfortable, navigating that. But as long as you are walking towards the ultimate vision, which will shift and change, but should ultimately be planted in something real, then you're doing something right.
Okay. We have a question from Breonna Nicole Davis on Facebook Live. She says, regarding sales and follow-up, how many times should you follow up before following up becomes overbearing to the client? Do you guys have any suggestions?
I remember a stat, now, and I don't know where I'm quoting this from, but I want to say it's at least 8 times. I know that sounds like a lot. It's a lot
across
more than you think it is.
Mediums.
Yeah. So for example, you meet someone and then, they say they're interested, and so you're going to reach out to them. So the good news is that's like a warm lead, right? You're already, but so then you send them an email, they don't respond. Well, stuff gets lost in email. So you might want to give them a phone call, right? Yeah. So they don't respond to your phone call. So then what do? I would say maybe you wait a week. You send a second email. And then, so I actually used to underestimate how important the follow-up was. And so I'd send email, and then I didn't hear from them, and I'd be like, oh, next.
Right.
But meanwhile, you kind of need to be
You
persistent.
got to push them because they have their own priorities.
That's right. And so, I mean, I think you have to do it enough to get a response. And then another thing you can be mindful of in your language is to say something like, I don't want to keep bothering you if you're really not interested, but from our conversation, it sounded like you wanted to learn more or something, right? So you actually almost want to get to a no,
Yep.
because if it isn't a no, it's a
Still
maybe.
a potential yes.
Yeah.
I like that.
So I think there's a way where we can sell ourselves short by
Right.
being persistent, because we don't. And I was going to actually bring this up earlier, because we don't want to be perceived as being like pushy or not nice, or like. But I think if you do it like warmly, and I mean, sometimes you get a response that you don't expect. Like I had one guy who was like, I will reach out to you when I'm ready. I was like, okay, that was a no. I got that. I got heard that time. I thought I was being helpful to say, oh, well, I'm going to check in with you in, 3 weeks time if I haven't heard back, just so we can stay in touch. And so you
the
kind of
problem is, I think that behavior, you feel like the behavior is wrong because you get a response like that. But actually the response tells you the behavior is right.
Yeah.
And obviously there's some nuance in how you treat people, and it has to be polite and compassionate and empathetic, and still listening to the client's needs and bringing that in so they remember why they need you in the first place. All of that is going to take practice. But I think the guideline is push until you get a response.
Yeah.
And then if you're really not getting responses, A, probably your communication and what you're saying isn't right, or B, just set a maximum timeline. I'm no longer going to reach out to this person after, say, 6 months, but that all depends on your product too.
And I agree with what both of you all said, and I would add on to it that it depends on what it is.
Right.
Because some stuff I'm not letting up. Now, I might give you a couple weeks to breathe.
Right.
But there's definitely going to be, I'm going to be consistent over a period of time. For me personally, that has been like my bread and butter. When I wanted to be a host for MTV, I called and emailed that guy for 6 months. And to the point that where he had to give me something. The same thing when I wanted to work at the clothing company. The same thing. I'm at over a year now, trying to get on. Make something happen with a particular network. So.
Right.
It just has to look different. But hey, what is it called? What's the email thing? Streak.
Right.
I use Streak,
Yes.
and I will set up emails to go out.
Oh, you got to tell me about this, because
So
this sounds
Streak
really good.
allows you to track whether or not someone's opening your email.
Oh,
Yes.
got it.
So,
But you can also schedule your
right,
emails with
schedule
it.
them to go out at a certain
Right.
time. You can write the email and then say send at this other time, so you can get a bunch of your stuff already situated and not have to worry about showing up at 15 minutes before 8 on Monday to get all your emails out.
And
That's
it's a Google
awesome.
it's a Google plugin for like Chrome. But like Eric put me onto that, and for that, because you might forget. But let's say you just get off the phone with that person and you know that you need to send me an email on Monday at 3 p.m. Just go ahead, do it right
That's
there while you're in the
awesome.
moment, and just boom.
Because I've actually been thinking about this whole email automation process, because I think it can be a way of staying in touch. So, I think that's really powerful.
Definitely. Okay. I mean, just reaching out until you get an answer is probably the best bet.
And Breon has just responded, and she says, "Thank you, great advice." That's Breon Nicole Davis.
Great.
Just wanted to put her whole name out there. So Lenore, how can we stay in contact with you? Social media handles, websites, and Eric the same.
So my website is launchwarrior.net. You can follow me on Twitter at L Kantor, LKANTOR. I tweet under myself, and then my business has one as well, launch_warrior. I'm also on Facebook and on LinkedIn, so happy to connect. And I'll just do a plug if you're interested in learning more about sales. That workshop's going to be on January 27th. It's like a 3-part series. Sales, the actual presentation, practicing that. Then there's going to be one on the actual elevator pitch. So that's helping you with your messaging. And the third one is going to be just on what we were talking about, which is building out your marketing plan for the year. So,
Okay. Eric?
You can find me. The best place to reach me is on LinkedIn and via email, Eric in Fondren, Fondren. My Twitter handle is Eric in Fondren as well. And my email address is eric@itelio. That is ITELL.io.
Okay. Well, beautiful people, you know where to find me, at Kevin Y. Brown, at CYLS Series. We're here every Sunday to bring you value and to help you create your best life. So thank you so much for listening in. Here is Bruno Mars with That's What I Like, and it's been a plum-pleasing pleasure. Beautiful people, if you enjoyed this episode of the Create Your Life series, be sure to download it from our podcast, which is available on createyourlifeseries.com, iTunes, Stitcher Radio, and Google Music. Also, be sure to leave a review of the podcast. You can catch us live on Sundays from 5:30 to 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time via 90.3 FM in New York, or on Facebook Live at facebook.com/KevBrown1. We encourage you to participate in the conversation on Facebook or call in at 212-650-6903. Follow us on Instagram at CYL Series and at Kevin Y. Brown. Be blessed, and we'll see you back here live next week.
Create your life.
Crée ta propre vie，
Create your life.
创造你的生活。
Create your life.
Crea la tua vita.
Create your life.
On skip your liver.
You better create your life.
Create your life.
Create la vie.
Create your life.
Create your life.